Let's check in with the doc and look at things with a wider lens. Pastor Richards on OMG.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning to you.
How are you doing, Pastor?
Doing great this morning. Good morning to all that are listening. I hear that you some transmission issues.
Yes. Not sure. I think they said all stations, but I don't know. I haven't been able personally to verify that.
Okay. Well, at least some people are listening by online radio or various different apps, radio apps that they have. So Radio Garden is a good one. So.
And you said that there was a day where we were off and you got tons of responses still, and that surprised you because that number of persons were still listening online.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I got more responses on that day than on a regular day. I guess it's because of the topic, dealing with issues related to women here in St. Vincent. And so that touched a nerve, resonated with people, and up to yesterday still people were commenting. I appreciate that. Oh, by the way, I'm talking about comments. Thank you, Mr. Weeks. You're always so kind and so gracious. And I heard you this morning talking about my commentary. And truth be told, I try to, I don't know. I don't know that I put a whole lot out there, to be honest with you.
What?
Really?
I
don't put a whole. I kind of ask a lot of questions.
But it makes people think, and I don't know if you remember. You said something to me, and I told you how I feel about thinkers.
Yes.
If you're not thinking, you might as well be dead because.
Yeah, of course I remember that, and I appreciated that you have to think your way through things, which is what I am trying to do this morning. Think my way through, let me say, navigate the course for reaction, because it's kind of like a journey, and if you don't navigate the course, you take wrong turns. Seriously, you take wrong turns. You've got to know and think through and navigate. Pretty much, I'm sure that any sailor beginning a journey, you do a pilot, you do your flight plan, okay? You have to figure out how you're going to make this trip, and so we've got to navigate the course for coronavirus here in St. Vincent, in terms of not for the virus, but for our reaction. And this navigation cannot be done in a vacuum. It has to be driven by what is real, not by what is supposed. And I think that's a key distinction that needs to be made, because I think there's some reactions I think would be driven by reality. But I think also that some reactions will be driven by supposition. And there is a wall of difference between, and you watch and see, Daniel, and you watch and see St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that there's a world of difference between reactions that are driven by rank supposition and reactions that are driven by, hey, this is a reality. And the question that we have to ask is, do we have a correct grasp of the reality of the story of the impact of the coronavirus in St. Vincent, or do we have a warped reality? And I that is something we have to figure out. Is it a warped reality of what's happening with the coronavirus here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Whose experience, for example, is driving our reaction? Is it the experience of other people driving our reaction? I mean, or is it St. Vincent's experience that is driving our reaction? Let me show you what I mean, right? It's been 2 weeks. It's been 8 weeks, 2 months about, since we've had our first case here in St. Vincent. Now, people, I just want to talk reality. I just want to talk reality, not supposition. And given our social constructs or our social reality, life in St. Vincent, which is... Okay, let me give you some details of what I mean by that. Our social reality of, we have close-knit communities, whether it's Layou, you drive through the streets of Layou or Georgetown, you know what the communities are like. People are out and about. Right. We have a lot of extended families that live in communal kind of homes. I don't want to specify an area, but I know mean, I know what I'm talking about here. It's not your nuclear family, mommy and daddy and a couple of kids living in a house. It's extended family. And some of these homes are congested. That's our reality in St. Vincent, right? We have confined spaces in stores. I don't know the last time you went through Middle Street. Typically Middle, or I say Middle Street, but Front Street or Back Street. You walk into a store, it's like a one-room little deal, and everything is out there. People, it's congested. Our public transport, buses, minibuses. I heard Mr. Weeks in the other day that they were built for X amount, and we are carrying X plus 3. So we put in more people than, so our social reality in terms of how things are constructed here, basically people who are thrown into close contact typically with other people. And you stack on that a healthcare system that it is not what necessarily you would get in New York or what you would get in Dallas, Texas. So given all of that, what was predicted and what was expected, and to be honest, you would figure that in that kind of construct with all of those things that I mentioned, that this would have been, once the virus got here, that it would have spread rapidly. That would have been a reasonable expectation. But it's been two months, and our real experience, what has that been measured against these expectations? I mean, what has been our real experience just on the matter of health, on just health only, in terms of people affected by the coronavirus, people who have had the COVID-19? And I've asked these questions before, and we need to continually, because this is an ongoing story, we need to continually ask these same questions. How does it look? What has been happening? So I don't want supposition with respect to what has been happening in our health. Let's just be frank and let's just be fair. Okay? Currently, I'm not talking about July or August or September. I'm talking about currently 2 months in. What has been the jeopardy to our health? And how has that played out 2 months in? So if you were to write our story as compared to the story of New York or Dallas or the story of New Jersey or elsewhere, what has been our story? And what has been our story with respect to the economics? Again, that has been, to me, there's a more devastating story there in terms of the economics, and because I've had first-hand account of so many different people whose economic situation, it has already been disrupted. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the waves that are being made by COVID here in St. Vincent, because I'm asking what is our reality? The waves that are being made by COVID here in St. Vincent are basically washing up on the shores of our economy and messing it up more so than anything. And even socially also, our reality, what is our reality with respect to the social dynamics? Education, well, I talked about that yesterday and some of the issues related to education and what has happened there. It's really disrupted church gathering, which is another aspect of the social life. There's some disruption there. Entertainment, talk to your DJs, talk to Flex, talk to other people. Carnival is taken off the calendar, and so many different things. Home situation, I talked about that yesterday, in terms of the dysfunctional homes and what is going to ensue when people kept together in close confines for a prolonged period like this. So when I asked what has been our experience so far, and I put those 3 dimensions into the mix, health and economics and social. If you were to be fair, not supposing, right? Not supposing, but if you were to be fair, which area has been in the greatest jeopardy? If you were to rank them 1, 2, and 3, health, how coronavirus has been affecting health in terms of the spread and COVID-19 and all of that. Economy in terms of loss of job, hotels losing bookings, taxi drivers losing, loss of the tourist industry, the tourist sector, people on part-time or people have been laid off. And then social, the different disruptions right across the board in terms of social life. If you were to be fair, I think you would rank. Let me not tell you how to rank them. All I'm asking you, if you are asking what is Vincentian reality right now, in terms of how it has affected health, how it has affected economics, how it has affected social life, I invite you to rank these in terms of where the greatest jeopardy is right now. And it will be surprising to see. Now, here's the problem. The problem is that we are having reactions, and these reactions are amplified because of fear. Now, Jerry said something this morning that I thought was rather interesting. So here we go with that, Jerry. Jerry said, our fear is an acquired fear. I thought that was rather interesting. Fear is an acquired fear. So I asked myself, acquired from where? Is it based on our situation? Because I just asked us not to suppose things, but to analyze and to be fair and to be honest, and to assess our economics and health and social life because of the coronavirus. So this acquired fear, is it based on what's happening here at St. Vincent? Where did it come from? Who did we acquire it from? Who did we acquire this fear from? Is it that it is based on the reporting that we are acquiring from elsewhere? Or has there been sufficient occurrences of X or Y or Z? Has there been sufficient cases here in St. Vincent? Has there been sufficient playing out in our health situation here as to give us just reason to have the fears that some are having? We have to be very careful about how we navigate and how we react. We really need to be careful. And the reason why I caution this is that there is an ideological battle that is going on right now related to the coronavirus. Mark my words on that. Believe me, there's an ideological battle going on related to coronavirus. The coronavirus is real, but there is an ideological battle that has worked its way into this. And because of this, it is slanting the reporting that we are getting from outside. You know, we are acquiring information. We are requiring advice. We are acquiring all of these that are spin-offs from an ideological battle. The ideological battle is very clear when I, for example, listen to CNN. It is, and the CNN is a station that I have listened to for years. And I'm so disappointed that they have sunken into this ideological morass in this particular matter. That it is very clear to me that their ideology is driving their reporting, and people like myself and others, if we're not very careful, we can acquire a fear that is based on their ideological bias. And the three things that I've noticed very clearly in that, and I will end with that, is the narrative bias that is every night now I am seeing in this kind of reporting. I mean, the matter is the coronavirus, but the ideology behind where they have their objectives is leaning them towards reporting with a narrative bias. Almost every one of the reporters now, this is what they're doing. They are adding an anecdotal reference to all of their stories. Anderson Cooper ends his programs with, okay, this person has died and that person has died and their beautiful family has died, and this guy has lost his husband, and you know, they're both crying and they're ripping at your heart. So there's this narrative bias that is driving some of their stories, anecdotal references. Why pick these stories? Why end your newscast with stories of death and devastation anecdotally to pull at human emotions? And then I also noticed the confirmation bias, that they are presenting data that confirms basically their objective, and they're ignoring contrary. Let me show you what I mean by that. Last night I heard that there's a new model that is projecting, and the reason why I talk these things is that we consume these news, we acquire these fears, to use Jerry's term, we acquire these fears. So when you hear now of a new model projecting death by the end of August, the projected death total will be 147,000, up by 10,000. And they kept pushing at that. Every single newscaster came on and pushed at it, and I'm there nodding my head. I'm like, yeah, I can see your ideological bias. I can see the battle going on. Because Fauci himself had said that models are only as good as the assumptions that are used to build them. Basically, a model is is like a mathematical equation where you have X, Y, Z. It's like a function, and whatever you put into that function will determine what comes out of that function. I say that as a math teacher. I know what I'm talking about. In short, garbage in, garbage out. So whatever assumptions you have and you build the model with, the model has no choice but to spit out X kind of figures. And if ideological biases affect your assumptions, then your assumptions are going to be tainted and the outcome is going to be tainted. But I see all of that. So I listened last night. I'm like, why is CNN pushing this particular model that is accelerating the death rate? Why? Because other news stations not doing that. And then the framing bias, where they're reporting facts in such a way to build a frame to control what people see. Ultimately, I have to, as I listen to all of this, and spinning off what Jerry said this morning, I have to be very careful that I do not acquire a fear that is based on the reporting of people who are engaged in an ideological battle. I am not a part of that. I am not in the experience. I am here in St. Vincent. Therefore, I have a choice. Am I driven, and do I allow myself to be driven by the narrative, by the ideological battle, by the narrative bias, by the framing bias, by the other biases, the confirmation biases that exist elsewhere? Or do I allow myself to assess properly what is happening here in St. Vincent in terms of our health scenario? What is happening here in St. Vincent in terms of how the virus is spreading? What is happening here in St. Vincent in terms of how people are being affected by the virus? What is our real story? And shouldn't our real story drive our reaction? And that is the question I want people to ponder today. Shouldn't our relatively good story, relatively good with respect to coronavirus, shouldn't that be driving our reaction? Just something that I want to consider. I'm done.
Thank you, Pastor.
All right, bye.
All right, thanks a lot.